Hey everybody, I'm Zach.
And I'm Jesse.
Time for Disruptive Investing.
All
and
right.
It's time for Cybertruck predictions.
Okay. I mean, it already came out. Don't we know everything about it?
Yeah, but we need to predict what's going to happen.
All
And look,
right.
let's start with a disclaimer here. We are not financial advisors. Do your own research. Investing is risky.
So Zach and I just got back from Austin, Texas, where we hosted the Cybertruck after party.
We live streamed with Sandy Monroe, Farzad Mesbahi, Kyle Connor from Out of Spec, Joe Barletta from Smart Charge America, Dr. Know-It-All, Joe Tegmeyer, and so many other amazing people.
If you haven't watched it, you should go check it out. You can just kind of skip through it all and see all the fun stuff.
It was recorded amazingly with steady cams, 360 cams, zip line cams, and just an amazing team from Corporate Streams. It looks great and sounds great too.
It was a massive amount of information to take in all at once as the day unfolded, but luckily we've had a couple days to decompress a bit and digest, and I think it's time we made some Cybertruck predictions.
So we have watched Tesla closely, and I mean weekly for the past 8 years, through 5 product ramps at 4 gigafactories, and so I think we are uniquely qualified to make some reasonably accurate predictions about what is going to happen with Cybertruck as Tesla ramps up production.
I think the first thing you have to unpack as a disruptive investor is whether you think the delivery event was a success or a botched event like many are calling it.
We went over some of the 2019 unveiling event stats compared to the delivery event stats 4 years later. And while I agree that I was disappointed in some of the price differences, so right, Elon said back in 2019 that the Cybertruck launch event that the Cybertruck would be priced starting at $39,900, and now we've learned that it's $69,990 for that variant. That's $21,000 more. The top tri-motor version was supposed to come in at $69,900. Now we've learned it's $99,900, and that is $30,000 more. And that's before the range extender at $16,000.
So $46,000 more. So I get it. Just on price, this might feel to many people like a bait and switch.
And let's look at the range differences. At the unveiling in 2019, Elon said 250 plus miles for the single motor. Now we've learned it's 250 miles. That's great. The dual motor was going to have 300 plus. Now we've learned it's 340. That's awesome. And the tri-motor was going to have 500 plus. Now we've learned it'll have 320. And of course, with the range extender, you get 470. So a bit of a miss on that one. Mm-hmm. Let's look at some of the other stats.
Originally, the payload across all 3 variants was going to be 3,500 pounds. Now we learned that it's 2,500 pounds.
It's not bad, but, towing, back in 2019, we were told 7,500, 10,000, and 14,000 pounds respectively for each variant. Now we've learned it's 11,000 pounds. Again, we don't know if that holds true for the single motor. I kind of doubt it, but that's better numbers for the dual motor, worse for the Beast variant.
At the unveiling in 2019, we were showed this awesome tailgate ramp. But now we learned that we aren't getting that, which is
and I'm kind of bummed.
Yeah.
But now we do get a few things that Elon didn't tell us about at the unveiling. We get the rear wheel steering. That is an amazing feature that I don't think a lot of people fully will be appreciating till they drive the truck. That means that the turn radius is much smaller, means it's much easier to do towing and getting in and out of parking spaces and stuff like that, which I can tell you driving trucks is a tough thing. We also get bidirectional charging. This is going to be a huge feature. I, again, don't think many people understand it until they use it. It's kind of like getting solar on your house or even driving an EV. You don't get it till you use it until one day there's a power outage in your neighborhood and you're the only one who can plug your truck in and power your house.
But going on to a feature that I think that you don't need to use before you get bulletproof, the Cybertruck is going to be bulletproof. Now, we knew that it would be dent-proof, as in a sledgehammer. I think that they showed like hail hitting it or maybe a 9mm bullet hitting it before, but we didn't all really think that it was going to be bulletproof.
No. So, was it a success or a botched event? And I think as a disruptive investor, that's the wrong question. That question gets us tied up in a little petty side arguments here and there over what Elon promised and what he delivered. What I think the enlightened disruptive investor does instead is look at the delivery event and asks, is the Cybertruck going to be a hit or not? Forget the promises, wipe that slate clean. Just look at what Tesla has shared with us about the Cybertruck today. Is the Cybertruck, as we know it today, going to be a success? And I think the answer, having spent some time with both the Cybertruck pre-production, the release candidates, and now the Cybertruck production model, is a resounding yes.
Especially since we have spent over a year with the Rivian R1T and the Ford F-150 Lightning. Now, I'm going to reserve some judgment until we actually get our Cybertruck. And remember that we're high on the list, so I'm hopeful that we're going to get it soon, so that way we can put it head-to-head against all the other electric pickup trucks on the market.
Yeah, we need to fully test the Cybertruck like we've tested those other trucks on range, charging, comfort, build quality, etc. But let's get back to predictions. I think demand will be extremely strong for the Cybertruck. I believe it will dethrone the Ford F-Series as the de facto American pickup truck within the next 3 years. But that depends on two things: Tesla's production ramp and margins. So let's discuss both of those.
The argument against Tesla being able to ramp Cybertruck quickly could be, number one, it's only being built at one factory. Number two, they botched other ramps in the past, namely the Model 3. And number three, this is a completely new vehicle in the way that it's constructed, the materials, etc.
Okay, so let's dive in. Number one, true. The Cybertruck is only being built at Giga Texas, but Giga Texas is one of the largest auto factories in the world, and it's just getting started. Tesla has enough land there to expand that factory many times over, and I predict they will keep expanding. One of the limiting factors on manufacturing, though, is labor. That's not only labor costs, but also physically getting enough skilled labor to and from your factory. What many of us are not allowing our brains to do is to realize that when Tesla starts making Tesla bots, remember that humanoid robot they're going to make, the labor problem gets flipped on its head and becomes a giant advantage for Tesla. Cheaper, skilled labor that never unionizes, never goes home, never files for a work-related injury claim, is infinitely trainable, works all day, all night, all week, all year without a break. We did a whole in-depth over on our Now You Know channel about this last year called Tesla Bot End of Human Labor. It's worth checking out to see what we think each Tesla bot is worth.
Elon said during the Q3 2023 Tesla earnings call that he wouldn't be surprised if they could start having Tesla bots working on the line at Giga Texas in November. Now, we didn't see any signs of Tesla bots working on the Cybertruck line during the delivery event, and Tesla did grant really cool access to that line to the attendees, which we got the footage of during our live stream. But that doesn't mean that Tesla bot isn't working on Model Ys, for instance.
Either way, what we do know is that Tesla bot will start replacing humans on the production lines, and as Farzad Mazbahi talked about during the Cyber After Party, just moving stuff around a factory is a huge part of production. Doesn't sound like much to just move boxes from one place to another, but that's largely what you're doing in a factory. So even if the Tesla bots start with just moving parts around, that's still a huge production advantage over humans.
And Farzad knows what he's talking about because he actually worked for Tesla.
Yep, and that was his job.
That was basically his job. And I mean, he was even admitting, like, part of my job could have been replaced by a robot.
Now, to point number two, that Tesla has botched production ramps before, especially when they tried to implement robots too quickly. Well, what we saw at the delivery event was that Tesla has already started automating tasks that humans usually do, like that robot that puts the wheels on the truck. Once you get this working, even at slowish speeds, you can then continue to dial that speed up over time as you work out the kinks. Each workstation that Tesla automates with either big one-arm robots or Tesla bots, or a combination of both, starts reducing production time and lowers production costs. And to point number three, that this is a completely new vehicle. It is. And I think that is the biggest factor at the moment in slowing production.
But Tesla keeps finding ways to reduce materials. For instance, by boosting the low voltage system to 48 volts versus 12, that means thinner gauge wire, which means less raw materials, which means lower costs and higher margins.
Not to mention, no paint. There's no paint shop. Now, I know that the underbody gets painted, but the hardest part to paint, the outer shell, doesn't get any paint. That's a huge time and cost savings.
Steer-by-wire, eliminating the mechanical steering parts and the ability to easily flip the steering mechanisms for right-hand drive Cybertrucks is going to be another huge money saver.
Yeah, a lot of other manufacturers have been trying to do this, and I know there's been a lot of pushback. It's like, I don't want my car to have steer-by-wire. That's dangerous. Since the 1980s, every airplane you've ever gotten into and flown in has had steer-by-wire.
Unless it's a plane where you could like look over and there's the pilot.
What?
Like a one prop airplane, like a Cessna or something, like a Piper Cub. Right. Yes, there's cables.
Any airline has been, since 1988, has been fly-by-wire. And most cars now are even brake-by-wire, not only throttle-by-wire. And there's been no accidents that I know of that have been reported that have been caused by that system. So the fact is, most other manufacturers would like to do this. It will end up saving them money, but they can't figure out how to. Tesla just did it. And they didn't just say, you know what, we're going to upgrade like the Model 3 to do it. They said, hey, let's just throw it on a completely new line. Let's talk about the no rear view mirror. This seems like a little thing, right? Well, who cares if you just don't need this one rear view mirror? But these things add up, and that's just one more thing they don't need. And before long, that disadvantage of the Cybertruck being a new vehicle will be over because Tesla will have learned what they need to be completely experienced about in making Cybertrucks. And if they want to make Cybervan or Cyber SUV, Tesla will now have the advantage over any other manufacturer.
And it's exactly the same as what happened when they switched to the GigaPress on the Model Y. The Model Y gigacasting was no easy feat by any stretch of the imagination. It was kept kind of hush-hush. It was not that big a deal in terms of affecting production that we saw, but the learnings that they used went straight into the Cybertruck on a much larger scale.
That's a really good point, because if on Cybertruck they had to put hundreds of parts together in both the front and rear castings, that would have meant robot after robot after robot station, right? Now, because they figured that out, they make one mold, ka-chunk, and that whole part is done.
And all you need is like 2 or 3 molds, and you have basically the frame of the whole truck.
Right. So I actually think a whole big part of the ramp, which Model 3 was slowed down on, was things like this, because we don't understand that a lot of those parts were glued together. And then they had to be, spot welded together, and then they had to be bolted together. Now it's just ka-chunk, move, that you're done.
And so the learnings that took place on the Model Y affected the Cybertruck, and the learnings that they're making on the Cybertruck with the stainless steel could be used in maybe a $20,000 robo-car.
It's true.
That doesn't need to be painted or fixed when it gets dented.
So next I want to talk about margins. One of the biggest factors in assessing whether a product of any kind is successful are the profit margins on that product. Many people talk about the Lucid Air as being a better car than the Tesla Model S in terms of handling and comfort, and maybe it is. But it also loses Lucid Motors over $400,000 per car to make. For the Cybertruck to be successful, it has to be profitable. And Tesla already has those numbers dialed in, so they know how many they have to make before they get to profitability. Elon said it will take about 18 months of Cybertruck production to get to profitability. So my guess is that when Tesla gets to about a 250,000 run rate, the Cybertruck will go from unprofitable to profitable.
Lastly, but arguably most importantly, is FSD, full self-driving. For most people in the world, things that they haven't experienced yet will never exist. But we, smart disruptive investors, know that history has shown this to be absolutely false.
Tesla's working on FSD as we speak, and in my opinion, having used AP for the past 8 years, I'm very optimistic about FSD becoming a reality very soon. When Teslas can drive themselves, these Cybertrucks have the hardware and the software to become robotaxis. That is the final piece of the puzzle, the piece that no one else has and which makes the Cybertruck a wildly valuable product. I left it for last because it almost overshadows every other cool thing about the Cybertruck. How fast it is, how much it can tow. Those things almost seem quaint when you plug in the full self-driving robotaxi that will only run on the Tesla network.
Because when a person buys full self-driving, they actually are signing a contract with Tesla that says that you won't allow the vehicle to be driven on any other network other than Tesla's.
So in some amount of time, whether it's next year or a couple years from now, whenever Tesla turns on the Tesla robotaxi network, it's game over for all the others, and Cybertruck will truly be king. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We'll see you next week on Disruptive Investing.